What a lovely beach this is at Cromarty. We're just coming to the end of the sand. The Sooters, it's a long time since I've seen the Sooters that calm, Katie.
Yeah, it's lovely.
It's a lovely beach, isn't
lovely.
it? And your dog's coming for a walk with us today. What's your dog's name?
It's Kai, yeah. Kai's just a wee brown Cocker Spaniel.
Lovely.
Yeah. He's a lovable rogue. He's recently had his hair cut.
I want you to meet Katie Mackay. Katie's a nurse. She spends her life caring for people. Yet 4 years ago, almost to the week, her elder brother Calum completed suicide, and she felt helpless. And that's what gave birth to Team Calum and her own quest to try and get more people talking about their mental health to stop them going through what she and her family have been through. Now, you've brought me to the stones at the end of the beach here. These stones are important to you, aren't they?
Yeah. My auntie's been collecting stones from this beach and has been decorating them and drawing a bow tie on the front with a lot of writing on the back to help me in my Monroe challenge. So yeah, these little stones have been... She comes back and forth every week now and again to pick them up.
I'm Dan Holland, and thank you for choosing to download this podcast. Speaking of suicide is meant to be open and honest. That's the whole point of it. But that doesn't always make for an easy listen. So remember, you can always press pause. And don't forget, there's support available from lots of avenues, including Mikey's line. And I'll give you their details after we've heard from Katie.
Kai's friend, he was a puppy.
Oh, does he know that dog?
Yes, that's me, Sky and Poppy.
Ah, right.
Spaniel friends.
So, did you grow up here in Cromarty?
Yeah, I've grown up here. We were born here. We lived in a wee flat in Marine Terrace, and then just on the shore actually, around where we met. And then we moved a couple of doors along to Bayview, and then that's where we were all of our life actually. Yeah, my mum and dad were brought up here too. And my dad's always lived here. My mum, she was brought up in Singapore, but she's always originally been from here. My family are actually, my mum's mum is one of the, my mum's mum has got 16 siblings.
Wow.
And they all live, they've all been brought up in Cromarty, so actually it's really funny because, yeah, there's so many of them and everybody will say, oh, are you related to the shepherds in Cromarty? And then you say, yeah, I am, isn't it? So that's funny, yeah. So mum is, yeah, well known in Cromarty. So every corner you take, it'd be hard to walk around Cromarty without somebody saying to you, oh, hello. Yeah, so you can't have a peaceful walk very much.
And what was it like growing up here? Because it's a lovely small village. It's for people that don't know Cromarty. Behind us, you can probably hear a boat passing. There's lots of renewable energy work going on at Nig. But Cromarty itself is steeped in history. It's a small fishing village, but it's probably, I guess, quite a close-knit community as well.
Yeah, it's really, really small. As I say, when we went to primary school, there was probably only, I think at that time when we were in school, there was quite a lot of us, but I probably would say about 50 pupils when we were in primary school. And so everyone in your primary school, they were all cousins, we were all friends, and it was really, really close. So you could just turn a couple of doors and you would meet your auntie or you would meet your granny, and it was really, really close, and everybody looked out for each other. In the winters, it could be quite cold and kind of lonely. There's so much freedom here. As kids, we just were out playing all the time with all ages. You used to play with younger kids and older kids, and that was just what you used to do. So every night after school and whatever, you would be out and about playing. So actually you had lots of freedom. And the funny thing used to be, because there were so many cousins, when we used to be out playing in the park, my auntie Jacqueline used to just shout at the top of her voice to the children. And this used to be from half a mile away, and you would hear her roar from the back door to shout us to say that dinner was ready. So everybody used to say, oh, Holly, that's your mum shouting, because you used to hear this absolute echo of Auntie Jacqueline just roaring to tell us all that dinner was ready, and it used to just be a funny thing. Remember when your mum used to shout, Holly, Reese? So that was really funny, yeah. But no, it's a lovely, lovely place, yeah. And then you obviously then go from Cromarty to the high school, and then that's when it then opens you up to this bigger kind of Worms of 700 people, and then that's when it opens up to the sort of whole community. But Cromarty is a lovely community, but also the Black Isle, it's extended to everywhere, so you meet so many people that you know, and it's lovely that. Yeah, but it's really lovely, yeah. And when you get it on a good day, it's great. But on a blowy, windy day, maybe not so much.
A blowy, windy day. It's very windy here. I've been here and on a windy day too. Tell me about Calum, your brother.
Yeah, so Calum,
Should we take a walk on
yeah,
the
of
beach?
course, yeah. Calum he was an absolute gent. Everybody used to say when they met him, he always had a beaming smile on his face, and he was always so gentle and so lovely to people that even the older ladies in the village used to always say, oh, Calum, he's just such a gent. They would see them with his friends, and he would be one of the only people in his friend group that would stop to make an effort to speak to the older ladies. And anybody really, he was always just so generous and kind to all these people that he wouldn't pass by without making sure that he had spoke to them or had asked them how they were. So he was really, really gentle. Looking back now, actually, you would think he definitely was very self-critical about himself. He played football and he left school and became a joiner. But he used to critique every bit of joinery work he did. He would critique a whole football match, whether he had whether the goal was right or whether he passed the right ball. He'd come home and ask my dad if he had done the right thing and if it was okay. And he would go over that in his head all the time. You know, he'd go for nights out with his friends and he'd come back and he'd critique what had happened on the night out and if he was okay and you know, was that sociable what he did and everything like that. And even when he was in school, he used to critique himself, because I remember my mum always saying he had to stand up in his English class when he was younger, as you do the horrid when you have to stand up and do a presentation in front of the whole English class. And he actually did this talk, and my mum always remembers that I think that was a trauma for him. He ended up standing up and talking about the death of his granny, which actually only happened when he was a kid. But actually I think the traumas around that made him then really... he critiqued himself, and the whole standing up in front of people then completely made him really quite anxious. So then when he got a bit older, as I say, he was self-critical, but he was still very sociable and he was still lovely. He did his joinery apprentice and then worked with a joiner in the Black Isle for years and years, and he was so particular. His joinery work was fabulous, you know, he was really, really good. But then he got fed up of the joinery. He left school when he was in 4th year, did the joinery and then decided actually that it was too much. So actually my dad works offshore. He's always worked offshore since we were kids. So he used to be away for long periods from could be from 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes 10 weeks. So he introduced him to the offshore living. So he went and started working offshore just as a standard rigger, and he was on different boats with my dad and different boats with people that my dad knew. So he started doing that and was going to all different places in Norway and, you know, up to the North Sea and stuff.
And how did he get on being on the same boat as your dad? Because it's, without being too stereotypical, it's a pretty...
Yeah. It's funny that
it's a male world offshore, isn't it?
So it's funny you say that actually, because my dad is he's worked offshore, as I say, for so long. He worked offshore. He started at Nig and then went offshore after that, and actually he's known quite widely in the offshore community, and he's got a funny nickname actually. They call him Wombat, so it travels quite far actually, this nickname. So anyway, Calum, when he went offshore, couldn't believe the amount of people that had due respect for my dad, because he looks out for all of his colleagues. He was really, really good with the Eastern Europeans that work on the boat. He's really good for them, and they all have higher expectations and they really respect my dad. So actually Calum, when he went offshore, then it came back to Calum that actually how well respected his dad actually was and how good he was at his job. So I think they got on great, and I think Calum really looked up to him for what he actually had achieved on the offshore, because when you're at home you don't know what's going on, but then when my brother went offshore on the same boats and on different boats, everywhere he went, he told them who he was. Everybody on the boat would say, "You're not Wombat's son, are you?" And then and Calum then I think really realised how much respect my dad actually had, and I think that then helped Calum in his journey offshore, because then he realised how much respect and how hard of a worker my dad really was in the offshore industry. So that was I think a good thing for him to see actually, because you couldn't see that at home because he didn't work at home. So then when he went away, it then made my brother realise actually how much of a valued guy he was offshore.
And what was he like for you as a big brother?
Yeah, he was really, really great. Yeah, he was he was pretty quiet, I would say. I'm really quite outgoing, quite noisy, quite chatty, and I'm quite confident. Whereas he would be a little bit more quiet. But he absolutely loved a laugh. You know, he'd sit back in the crowd, and he'd listen to what was all going on. But then, if the time came, he would soon pipe up a comment and would be quite cheeky and quite humorous. But it would have to be when he was okay with that, you know. But I really looked up to him. We had the odd wee fight now and again, but nothing like other siblings. You know, we got along really, really well. And I looked up to him, and he looked after me when I went to high school. I remember everyone would call me as a crybaby. I used to cry a lot actually as a kid, which is quite funny. Everyone used to say, "Oh, Katie, you were always bubbling, your bottom lip would always go." But actually I went to the high school and I felt like I was getting bullied at one point, and he and his friends stood up for me, and he went to those group of boys and says, "Look, don't gang up on my sister." And ever since then I managed to I had a bit of a chip in my shoulder, and I felt like I was okay because my brother stood up for me then, and I always remember that, and they never ever did it again. So he did definitely, he looked out for me as a sister, which was really, really nice. And we got along great, As time went on, as we got a bit older, our relationship, I would probably say when we got a bit older into our teenagers and when he was a joiner, it maybe got a little bit strained at times because I would be upset about things that he was doing that would upset my mum. He started using cannabis, which is absolutely fine. And now when I look back to it, actually it was okay. But my mum was always so upset about that, and I obviously then took the upset from her, which made that difficult. And then that did give a bit of a dynamic to our relationship because I felt like he wasn't respecting the family and my parents. But actually, looking back on it now, you just wish it wasn't a problem, and you just let him do what actually he probably needed to do, because actually from his slight he lacked probably a little bit of confidence, and that maybe just helped him keep at bay. And also his self-criticism and how he critiqued everything he did. When you look at that now, you think actually that is hard to maintain. It's a hard thing to keep up, being so self-critical about everything that you do.
Was he a perfectionist?
Yeah, I would say he was a perfectionist, He was always so perfect in what he wore. As I say, in his joinery work, he'd look over everything that he did, and even his football match, he would want everything to be perfect. So that's, it's hard to keep up with that. And actually, when you look back, you think that in itself is so hard to keep up with, that actually you can't keep up with that. It's hard to maintain a perfectionist life, isn't it? And he got a flat, and the flat was a bit run down. It was a fourplex flat when he moved in, and he ripped it from top to bottom, and the whole place was like a new build by the end of it, and he absolutely loved that. But you soon think that actually that's hard to keep up with. Yeah.
You mentioned he did a talk about your granny at school.
Mm-hmm.
He maybe found that difficult. Did Calum ever talk about difficulties in his life to you, or did he ever talk about his mental health?
No, Calum, no. His mental health was never discussed. He would never say that he had mental health problems. He never ever sought advice from a GP. To our knowledge, he's never ever gone to anybody for help. Life just plodded on. And he was a perfectionist, and he was self-critical, but I don't think he ever identified himself that actually he could get help for things that were going on in his mind that actually it was hard to keep up with. And I suppose then as he got older, which makes it difficult, to us, and now looking back, he had everything. He had a great flat, he loved his cars, he had a great job, he had a good bank book, but actually there was something not quite right with him, and actually it's sad now when you think back that he couldn't identify that there was something not quite right. And I don't think the use of drugs helps either. I think the come downs from using drugs can be really, really hard, and I think friends groups have to look out for one another, because the feelings of when you're in a come down, I've never personally had any experience, but they say that you can feel terrible, and it's a place where I don't think anybody really wants to be.
What do you think held him back from talking to anyone? Was it that he was a young man in the Highlands, and we know that in itself makes it hard for people to talk? Was it the industry he was working in? Was it his self-pride? Was it that perfectionist in him? What do you think?
I think it probably could be a mixture of all of that. I have noticed, obviously, Calum's passed away now. He's been dead for 4 years, and I could say from back then to now, the discussions around suicide and men's mental health is so much more talked about back then than back then now. So I think it definitely was living in the Highlands, being a man, not knowing when to talk up. As I say, my dad was so well respected in the oil industry that actually, it was a bit of pride. That I don't think he ever identified that actually the help could be there. I think you could be right. I think it could be a mixture of all of those things. And I think then being caught up in the midst of feeling like he was happy in a good place, but actually maybe being caught up in a place where he wasn't so happy when he was alone, but he wasn't able to reach out to a place where he could have found help. You know, because actually the night that he passed away, I had asked him over for macaroni for dinner, and my mum was coming for dinner. Our dad was offshore at the time, and me and my boyfriend were in our house, and my mum came over for macaroni, and I know he'd been out the night before watching football and on a night out, so I thought I'll send him a message and say, look, there's macaroni on tonight, head over. And I didn't get a reply, so then I tried to call him and asked him over, and there was still no reply. So that he didn't want to obviously burden anybody. I don't think he wanted to give anybody his worry. So as I say, yeah, you're right. The pride of it all, he didn't seek the help that he needed. Yeah.
We only need to talk about anything you want to talk about, and if you want to stop, just stop. But that afternoon, when you invited him over for macaroni, when did not answering the phone or not being able to get hold of him escalate into worry and a concern about his safety?
Yeah, I think on the evening when Mum was there, she says, I've tried to call him, he's not answering. And I had tried him and he hadn't answered, and we tried to call him a couple of times, and then we just thought he's probably actually sleeping. He's had a rough night the night before, he's probably not wanting to bother us. And to be honest, our relationship wasn't in a place where I would text him every day. I wouldn't text him, you know, we could go a couple of weeks without texting, and that was quite normal. But if we were over at Mum's house or I had seen him, we would catch up all the same, but we weren't into texting every day. So actually we thought, he's probably just actually KO'd and he's probably sound asleep. And we left it at that. And then the next day, I was actually at work in the hospital. I'm a nurse there, and I was at my work, and I remember it was first thing in the morning, and you go for your first morning breakfast, which is probably about 10 o'clock, and my mum texted saying, I've still not heard from Calum, what do you think we should do? And I remember being in the staff room, and my colleagues had said to me, I says, we've not heard from my brother since the night before. And I remember somebody in the staff room, and it'll always stick with me, said to me, if you've got a reason to be concerned, you've got to go. Because I was only in my first year in my train, I had only just not long qualified by then. And I thought, yeah, I've got to go. And his flat was only in Inverness, and our cousin Holly, she just lived round the corner. So while I was getting changed out of the hospital, I phoned her and said, look, can you drive down to his house and see if there's any response or any sort of movement? And so she was at the door, and she had a wee baby, our little niece Amelia. She was just wee then. And she went to the door and she says, no, I'm not getting anything, there's no response. And during that process, I was in the midst of driving up there and drive to his house, and still, you know, I don't think we had, I thought that he had, I had thought that he had had a heavy night. He had gone to his bed and he maybe had aspirated, he had maybe been sick. And me and my nurse had been caring. I thought that I was actually going to have to go in and try and resuscitate him, is what I had actually thought. And it wasn't that, yeah. Which is tricky.
It is.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're used to helping people all the time, and there's...
Yeah, and then that then just brings you straight to this sadness that you couldn't have helped him. Yeah, and yeah, then the traumas around all of that and what you discover. Yeah, it's really tricky.
Do you want to pause for a sec?
Yeah. I'll just be a couple of seconds.
You take all the time you need. All the time you need. If you or someone you know are worried about a friend or a family member who you think needs some help, then you can text Mikey's line on 077 86 20 7755 or contact them via Messenger, web chat or Twitter. They're available Sunday to Thursday 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. and Friday to Saturday 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. You right?
Yeah.
Let's take a walk.
Okay.
It's getting noisy behind us.
Yeah,
there's a boat moving just
a
up
racket,
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully our bodies will be able to help keep the noise out.
Yeah. There's someone rowing out there between the suitors.
That's I think that might be the skiff boat. Yeah. I didn't see them pass us that way, so I'm not sure if it's. I think it could be Cromarty.
You've said it's just over 4 years. We're talking at the end of October now. It's almost 4 years to the day since Calum passed. Let's talk a wee bit about grief, because everyone grieves in a very different way, don't they? And how have you grieved for the last 4 years? If that's not too much of an impersonal question.
Yeah, no, I think at the beginning, the the feelings, as I say, as that me being a nurse, you want to help people, and the overwhelming feeling of actually how Calum must have felt to the point that he had to take his own life is overwhelming. The fact that he couldn't call out to help us and the sadness that he must have been in is overwhelming for us, for me, you know, back then at the first couple of years. It's hard to get your head around how he must have been feeling and how sad he must have been to feel that actually he could no longer live in this world. So that back then was really hard. And then I think from there then you kind of progressed up a feeling of feeling alone. It's just me and Calum. We were just the pair of us. I have no other siblings. And so then after that, the feelings of being alone and actually having to, you know, the thoughts of life and my parents and looking after them as me just being on my own. He was the older brother, so I think that's when it then hits you that actually he's no longer there to help me and help protect me and help look after us in the future. So that took a long time to get over, and it still does. Because I completely agree, there's people that are only childs, but they've always been only childs, and that's what they grow up to know. Whereas I've known that there's always been two of us, so then I've had to change my dynamics to knowing that actually, yes, there always will be two of us, but actually here in life there's only just me. And then you have to get your head around how you're going to manage and how you're going to move forward and things, because you don't know what's around the corner. As I say, the sudden surprise of Calum's passing, this could happen any time, you know, you don't know. So that was overwhelming, and then after that, then you kind of move. And I've never been really angry with him. I've always just felt sad that he couldn't ask for help. So I can't say that I've ever felt angry towards him about anything that he's done or the thoughts of him leaving. I've never been angry with him. It's just more the sadness that he had. And then as time moves on, I've just gone to the point where I want to try and help people. You know, back then when he passed, we said, we'd try and arrange, sort of do something in his memory to try and keep his memory sort of alive and raise money to try and help people. And we've always tried to work out ways in which we can, you know, try and help him and try and help other people so that they don't have to feel like they're alone. And now, 4 years on, as I say, back then, years ago, in the first couple of years, the traumas and the images that you hold with you is so raw, and that lasts there a long time. I did go and see some help for that, and that definitely helped. Because being young and not actually, you don't expect any of that, but actually it's real. It really is real, and actually it lasts with you for a long time, and it's still there. But I've learned to actually progress and learn to. I've got coping mechanisms to try and not do that. You can be in quite a dark place yourself, and you can really go into those feelings, but you have to learn how to move away from those feelings. And I've learned as years has gone on to try and take yourself away from that, you know. And it's only the way that I'm managing, and that's the only way I manage to move forward is by taking myself away from those traumas, because if not, you will keep traumatizing yourself you can keep doing it, can't you? Whereas actually I try to move forward, and I've built up coping mechanisms to move forward with that, which has helped. So those things that I had back then year 1, year 2 aren't there as often now, and I have to focus on them. So actually in the grieving process I can see even in other people how being so raw to now how you move on. And I think it's now the stage where you're, as I say, you're left with this sort of long-standing sadness for him. Yeah.
And what about the close family that you described at the start of our conversation? Have you all developed coping mechanisms?
We're very open, you know, our discussions are very open. We discuss Calum all the time. Calum isn't somebody that's gone anywhere you go with cousins, with aunties. He's always very well discussed, and even with blokes he's discussed. His friend group discuss him, so it's not something that we've stopped talking about, because we very much keep it alive. Our little nieces and nephews, it's very much alive with them. He's still with us with them, and we keep that going, which we feel is the best thing to do, instead of actually not talking about it, because that's the problem with actually not talking about it. It needs to be talked about more. So I feel like as a family we talk about him and what's gone on and things like that, but I do feel like there's probably parts of our family, some people in the family that maybe haven't sought the help that they need to help. But actually as a family I think it helps all of us by being so close-knit and by discussing it, by making sure that everybody's heard. I think, is what we do. But individual people's feelings and how they feel, I can't say that we all discuss that much, which is probably something that probably should be discussed a bit more. But it isn't something, it's a hard one to discuss, because you don't want to relive what's happened before. But sometimes actually doing that helps people move forward, doesn't it? But we've tried to just keep the sort of childhood memories alive, and by going back to Granny's Highland Hame and taking our cousins with us, to make them realise that, you might be in a tent or a caravan and you might be drinking beer and it might seem really uncool, but actually it's not cool. You can have just as much fun in Granny's Highland Hame with your family around you, loving you, all the same, with a barbecue, So we do try and keep those things alive and try and ask our younger cousins to come, so that they, feel included and they feel, part of it. But, because I think Calum didn't want to come on the family holidays because it was uncool, but it's just trying to make them realise that it is cool and that you are loved, and if you come along, you will see that you've got the love, So, yeah.
While we've been talking on the beach here in Cromarty, Kai has been digging trenches in the sand. It's like bomb holes on the beach here now. But he's got a red bow tie on his collar. Katie, tell me the significance of that red bow tie.
Yeah, so back in July in 2017, we went to a cousin in Cromarty's wedding, actually, in Strathpeffer, and Calum working offshore and things, you don't always get to go to these opportunities. He missed weddings, you miss social events, but actually he was home at this time that we had this wedding on, and so he thought so hard into what he was going to wear, and the thoughts were, will I wear a kilt, will I wear a suit, what will I wear? And he was absolutely delighted. He got this new suit from Slater's, and we were all so surprised because he rocked up with this navy suit on and he had this red bow tie on. And so that was actually probably one of the last times as a family and all of our cousins that we were together celebrating our cousin's wedding, and he just looked so dapper and so smart with his big grin on, with this big red bow tie, and he probably really did get a lot of, I'm sure they all took the Michael out of him to quite a lot of extent, but he felt really good in this suit and he absolutely loved it. So ever since then, actually, that image and that picture of him with his red bow tie has stayed with everybody. And for his funeral, that was the dress code, was red bow ties. And so since then, I've tried to keep the red bow tie alive, and Kai has always got it on his collar.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So that's what's sticking out of him there.
Now, you've described at certain points while we've been talking about a sense of, at times, of feeling helpless. And as a nurse, your natural instinct, I guess, is to want to help people. You've just completed what you've called your 30 Monroe challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which ultimately you're helping more people. Tell me about this challenge, Katie, because it's been a big challenge for you, hasn't it?
Yeah. So in February just past, Calum would have celebrated his 30th birthday. So as a family, we had decided that we were going to do something in his memory for his 30th birthday to try and raise money. But with COVID and everything, we were originally thinking a ceilidh or some sort of event or something like that. But actually with COVID, it's hard to do. But with COVID, when it was here, it was hard to do that. So I actually decided, I wonder if I could do something, a sort of 30, something with 30, a challenge. So I decided, I've never climbed a Monroe before, and during lockdown I seen people doing Monroes and it looked great, and I love photography and I love the outdoors, so I thought, I'll give it a try. So I had gone around asking, would it be achievable? So I decided from February to February in the year of his 30th birthday, I would try and climb 30 Monroes in his memory by raising awareness of suicide and trying to help bereaved family and support groups and things. So I had I kind of set myself to do that, and as I say, I started on the 1st of March, and just on Saturday past I finished Monroe number 30 with a group of 18 people and a couple of mountain leaders. We went to Cairngorman, blustery, 45 miles per hour winds and snow, and we managed to get there, and so that was really, really good. My giving page is currently at, I think, about £8,100, and I had set out to do 30 Monroes at 30,000 feet and to raise £3,000, but actually it's at £8,000, so it's marvellous. And what makes it even more special was on Saturday past, it would have been 4 years that Calum passed away. So actually we all went as a family to Cairngorms. There was a big support group out at the bottom, and all of our friends that came to the top with us. It was Calum's friends and my mum's friends and my friends and everybody that had done Monroes with me. We all went, and it was really, really special, yeah.
It must have been a really emotional day to be standing on top of Cairngorm.
Yeah, well, actually, I have found, to be honest, I think I've been holding it all in very, very well, and I think it probably will hit me like a ton of bricks. But I have found those times gone on that you can be on the top of a mountain and meet a complete stranger, and I've got charity T-shirts, and they'll ask you what you're doing, and in that midst of them asking what you're doing, to tell somebody what you're actually doing brings you to tears. And on the top of mountains I've done that, and I've had complete strangers crying with me on the top of a hill. So actually on Saturday with 18 friends, my friends, family and Calum's friends, I've probably learnt a coping mechanism that if I broke down at the top of that hill, the whole place would have too. And I think, I don't know, just me and the type of person I am, I managed to hold myself together, and I think I probably did that for all of our friends, because the rippling effect when you do break down, after we've experienced what we've experienced, I've noticed that it's quite hard for people to come back from that. So I think it'll probably hit me soon. I'm not sure when, but it probably will. I'm probably still living on cloud 9 at the moment, but it might come back down with a big ton of bricks. Yeah.
And you've been leaving stones on top of these Munros as well.
Yeah,
haven't you?
so the stones, my auntie's been doing these lovely stones for me. On the front we've got a red bow tie, and on the back it says hashtag Team Calum. And also we've left what would you say, a really key message that actually my brother left us a message and a note, and on that note one of his key things was to stay strong and stick together. So on our stones on the back of them, that's what it says. And since I've done that, it's actually made me realise that lots of people have got in touch with me. Complete strangers have found my stones and have got in touch to say, look, I've actually lost my brother to suicide, and that day that I was on that mountain, it's really carried with me, and your brother and my brother have come with me for this whole walk. So it's just helped raise awareness, and I'm now still in touch with that guy. And there's another lady who I met that one day. We stopped on a Munro and had some lunch, and she got to the point where she asked, what is it that you're doing? And we explained to her our sandwiches, and actually time had gone past, we didn't catch her name, but she then called out on Facebook looking for us because she was desperate to try and find us, because our story, well, my story really touched her, and she was so happy to move forward, and she's helped share my page and has got further donations because she wanted to raise awareness as well. And as I say, I've only probably left stones on about 20 Munros, but as time's gone on, I'm noticing more and more that people are getting in touch from the stones that I'm leaving. So I do intend to leave stones on every Munro that I go to try and see how far I can get this message to go. Yeah.
Fantastic. And it's about opening that conversation, isn't it?
Yes,
it's
of
about
course. Yeah.
Starting that conversation.
Yeah.
Final 2 questions, Katie. How do you remember Calum?
Yeah, I remember him as being really, really lovely. He's a total gentleman. He's friends with everybody. There was never anybody that he wouldn't like or that wouldn't like him. He was a real lovable log with a very big smile and had a heart of gold. Yeah, he really was. Yeah, a gem. Yeah.
And what would you say to anyone who might be in difficulty now, not sure what to do, not sure who to talk to or where to go? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say that there is. It might not be a big organisation. It might not be any sort of big company. But there's lots of people out there that are willing to listen. You know, as I say, anybody from walks of life is willing to listen to you, and you actually don't know what each person is going through. And actually, you could just turn in a cafe or in a train station and start explaining that you're feeling quite low, and that person that you speak to would be probably very willing to talk to you. So actually, it's just to look for the help, look out for your friends, and make sure that you're there for one another, and appreciate that actually, that anybody can go into a low, anybody can be in a bad place. They might seem great and they could be the life and soul of a party, but actually, you need to look out for each other and be very open with one another. Yeah.
Katie, thank you. I think Calum would be very, very proud of his wee sister.
Yeah, I hope so.
Standing here talking in Cromarty today. Thank you for sharing your story with us on Speaking of Suicide. A reminder of Mikey's line: if you or someone you know needs help or advice, you can text 07786 207755 or contact them via Messenger, web chat or Twitter. They're available Sunday to Thursday, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m, Friday to Saturday, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Here's Shona McPherson from Mikey's line with a few thoughts for you to mull over.
Listening to Katie describe what she understands might have been going on for Calum, the difficult time that he'd been having in his own head with being incredibly critical, with struggling with anxiety, it's it feels important not in any way to judge Calum for not getting help. None of us can know what that was like for him, but it feels really important just to remind all of us the difficulty of feeling of intense anxiety, the ways that we feel about ourselves when we are hard on ourselves and critical on ourselves. This is not an unusual way to be in the world. Many of us suffer from these difficulties, and there is help available. Yes, it's not always easy to get, there's waiting lists, but there are charities like Mackay's Line that can help when you feel in crisis with these things while you're waiting for support or counselling. So I think it's really important to remember that, and also to think, what is stopping us, particularly stopping men in the Highlands of Scotland or throughout Scotland in getting this help when they are in mental health crisis. And Katie is sort of becoming part of that, the solution for that as well, through her own journey. She's talked about the intense grief that she experienced for 2 years, the trauma, getting help for that, and now 4 years down the line, feeling the shift from the intensity to this living with the ongoing sadness and making meaning, raising awareness through her brilliant Monroe challenge and leaving these meaningful stones on the rocks to encourage conversation in different ways. So if you are struggling with difficult thoughts or feelings, please don't be alone with this stuff. Reach out. Mackay's Line is here for you, or friends or family, whatever feels comfortable for you.
A huge thanks to Shona and all the team at Mackay's Line for the work they do. The podcast platform is supported by D&D Paving Limited. Please do like, share and comment about the podcast. And if you want to get involved by sponsoring an episode or telling your story, get in touch with Mackay's Line. Speaking of Suicide is an adventurous audio production, and the music is Nana by Tom Ireland.